Welcome to episode 112 of the High Volume Hiring Podcast. I am Stephen Rothberg, the founder of College Recruiter, and I am joined here, as always, by my co-host, Jeanette Leeds, COO of College Recruiter. Jeanette, good to see you.
Hello, good to see you as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanette Leeds, and I'm excited because we're here today with Martyn Redstone. He is an AI and automation consultant to the recruitment industry, and really excited to have him here to talk to us. So, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Well, we're thrilled to have you here. Why don't you just before we dive into the full topic, give just our listeners, if they don't know you already, quick background on who you are
Yeah,
or what you do.
yeah, absolutely. So as you said, AI and automation consultant to the recruitment industry. I've been in the recruitment industry for just over 20 years now. I always make a joke that I'm only 23. It's just been a really hard life in those last 20 years.
Yeah, you really need to start taking care of yourself,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I think the grey started to come out in the beard now, but yeah. So I've spent the last maybe 10 years or so really kind of specialising in innovation and transformation in recruitment processes. But actually, about 8 years ago, I founded what is the industry's first, or what was the industry's first, AI and automation agency. And I've been doing that ever since. I work with recruitment teams both in-house and agency and RPO all over the world on how they can adopt, enable, and take advantage of AI and automation. I've actually been doing that, like I said, for several years, kind of pre-Chat GPT hype and post-Chat GPT, which has been more important. I've been really specializing in how people do that responsibly, ethically, legally, and without doing any stupid. I was going to say something that I probably can't say, can't broadcast. So really kind of really focused on AI governance nowadays.
Awesome. So, question for you. I was in a conversation and thought you'd be a great guest to kind of flesh this out. It was a conversation on LinkedIn several months back, and the point was basically made that a lot of the AI powered hiring systems, whether it's an ATS, job board, whatever assessment, a lot of them kind of will essentially take the CV or resume from the candidate, compare it to the job posting ad, and then give you some kind of a score or rank. And if you've got 200 people that applied to a role, it's essentially going to rank them from 1 to 200, 1 maybe being the highest, 200 maybe being the lowest. The assumption that I think a lot of employers make is that that candidate at the top is going to be more productive than the candidate at the bottom. But the point of the discussion is, how do employers know? If they never even interview the candidate at the bottom, let alone hire them, let alone have that person working for them for a couple of years, how do they know that they're more productive? So, AI guru, um, how do we know?
Well, it's a fantastic question. We shouldn't be putting our trust and our faith in vendors and their marketing and their sales spiel, because ultimately, if we want to do this responsibly and actually legally in a lot of places in the world and a lot of states in the US as well, we won't talk about the executive order and what have you, but ultimately, we need to be asking those kind of questions, and also we need to be testing it ourselves, so we don't just take it verbatim that this bottom lot, chuck them in the trash. They're no good. Let's just automatically reject them. We can't do that anymore. We need to be auditing. We need to be, we need to be supervising the AI. And we can only do that through transparency from our vendors, and so we can't have this black box situation anymore where vendors won't tell us how it works. They won't give us access to, to the engine. We need to understand how it works. We need to be able to explain that to our colleagues, our candidates, and we need to be able to audit it to make sure that it is doing things as we would expect it to.
It's great. It's such good, not even advice, but ways to be working. I know earlier in the green room we were talking a bit about how vendors have changed over the years. At first it was here's the matching, here's whatever, and it's again, black box, right? And it was don't worry about it. And we've sort of seen an evolution of that over the years, where now a number of vendors, not all of them, will say this is X, Y, and Z, and they're very transparent, but not everyone. So maybe you could give some advice on what questions employers should be asking. And I'm also interested, especially for those who aren't super tech, because you alluded to understand how it
Well,
works.
yeah, absolutely. And And some very, very good points. I mean, look, we've had lots of court cases over the years, not just the recent one with Workday and Mobley, regarding kind of potential bias in AI systems. But over the years, we've had a lot of court cases, a lot of litigation around the black box, question. And so, what that has been doing, what legislation has been doing, and what some of those, especially the Mobley Workday case, has been doing, is putting pressure on vendors to finally prove the trustworthiness of their systems. So we should be expecting our vendors to show that proof as part of their sales process. So like I said, not just relying on marketing and sales veneer, but actually showing that proof as well. So the questions to ask, you're right, because what we don't want to be is technical gurus who can understand, lots and lots of different technicalities around how the system works. But we should be asking, can you explain how this algorithm works in a natural language way so that somebody like me, a non-technical person, can understand it and can reiterate that to my stakeholders, to my colleagues, to my candidates? We should be asking, when was the last time you audited for bias? When was the last time you audited for rank drift? Rank drift, AI systems, a lot of people don't understand, but they can change that ranking order on a regular basis, and so we call that rank drift. Again, it's a very technical concept, but the question is, can you explain how you audit that, and can you explain what the mechanisms you have in place to keep on top of that, because they're not one-time things? So there are all these kind of questions, standard data security questions. What do you do about what do you do about anonymization of data? What do you do about bias? Where do you hold your data? What do you do about adversarial attacks, prompt injection attacks, those kind of things? You don't need to be technical to understand it. You just need to know those questions are coming, from a vendor perspective and also from a buyer perspective.
I love how you said, Martyn, that, that we need to, hold our vendors to, a higher standard, or some words to that effect. Is this a vendor problem, or is it also an employer problem?
It's a very, very, very good question. The answer is, it depends where you are in the world. And I know that sounds terrible, but there's a lot of different legislation out there. Well, there's no one standard. But I would say, best working practice, it's a both problem. And so again, as a buyer, we shouldn't be trusting vendors. And as a vendor, we need to be trying to earn that trust. So it's a kind of
Hmm.
horrible, vicious cycle. But as a buyer, we need to do our own tests. We need to do our own checks. The question is, if I was manually sifting and scoring and ranking this bunch of resumes that I'm getting, is the AI doing the same? Is it coming out with the same kind of response that I would have? It's
Hmm.
those kind of things that we need to be thinking about. So actually, I see the future of recruiters being very much, supervisors of algorithms. Checking in, making sure they're doing their job properly, looking at that bottom and saying, were these people rejected for the right reasons, and looking at the top and saying, would I have put these people through to the next stage? So it's all those kind of questions we need to be asking. So you're right, it's a good question, and the answer is, it's a both problem.
I love that.
Leading a growing business, it's like building a plane while flying it. Team building, decision making, and scaling all at once. At CPO Playbook, we get it. That's why our podcast, ranked in the top 10% worldwide, tackles the toughest leadership challenges with insights to help you lead smarter and grow faster. Tune into the CPO Playbook podcast, because leadership doesn't come with a manual, but we're pretty close.
As you were answering, my mind was going to someone who, like, what would those tests be? Right. And you started answering it like, okay, do this kind of test. Like, maybe you could share some more examples, or even, I don't know if you could share a story of someone you've worked with where they tested for X, Y, and Z, and this was the outcome, just to really bring it to life.
Well, what I can talk through actually was a really interesting piece of research that I did last year, which was, we're in a situation in the industry which is unfortunate, where recruiters are being asked to do more with less. They're not really being given great budget to do more with less. So they're turning to commercial tools like the public version of ChatGPT or Gemini, or dare I say Grok, or anything like that. So what we're seeing is recruiters turning to these tools and trying to use them. And so putting in a pile of resumes and saying, here's the job description, give me the top 10, give me the top 10, the reasons why, etc. And so I did a piece of research earlier on last year, around what actually happens. And it was a really, really scary story.
Ooh.
So across all three, there was only a 14% overlap in the top 10. So, and this was 100, to give you the data behind it, one job advert for an HR business partner, 109 HR related resumes, every day for a month, put through those three systems, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok, with exactly the same prompt. So overall, really scary. Like I said, across the board, 14% overlap in agreement on that top 10 on a daily basis. 55% weren't even looked at, because what we noticed was large language models. They have ultimately a race to the finish line. So once they found their top 10, they stop looking at all the rest.
Oh,
What
wow.
else? Rank drift, we talked about. I mentioned that earlier. A plus minus 2.5 places movement on a daily basis, and lots of other scary things coming out. So the
Wow.
real world, it is scary. And so my recommendation for my clients is to keep a control of CVs and or resumes, whatever you want to call them for your audience, and do this test. So exactly that, that one job description, that one job advert with a bunch of resumes, so how they should be performing on a regular basis. Once a month, push them through the system again and see how they're changing, see if they're, so it's that kind of control group that's really, really important. You know what they are, they're data that's known to you, you know how they should be performing, so test it on a monthly basis and see whether you're getting the same results. If you're not, that's fine, but know what your appetite for risk is, and know how to manage that variation and that variable.
The difference between the three major systems plus the others that we didn't even talk about,
Yeah.
I suspect that all of our listeners would say, well, that makes sense, right? OpenAI is going to have a different way of looking at it than Gemini, than Grok, than, pick your flavor of the
Yeah.
day. The drift is different. You would think that somebody who applied on Monday, and if the resume or CV is the same on Monday as it what is on Tuesday, and if the job posting hasn't changed, it should be the same. I can see over the course of a year or more, right, that things change, but
Yeah.
every day, that's astounding to me. Is this similar, Martin, to if an employer is, say, using a staffing company to do the same kind of function, having a whole bunch of people applying, or in the UK, an agency, and having an actual person go through? Do the employers need to use that same sort of oversight? How are you determining who's well ranked? How are you determining who are the finalists? Is it akin to this?
It's a very, very good question. It all depends on the systems being used. Ultimately, and just to your point, yeah, Gemini actually had one of the worst, which was over the course of 2 or 3 days, somebody went from first place to literally dropping out of the top 10. So, and actually, to your point of whatever flavor of the day, the choice of AI model shouldn't impact who gets a role.
Right.
And you could be a Microsoft company, you could be an OpenAI company, you could be a Google company. The choice of AI model should not impact who actually comes out with a job at the end of that process. So I think that's a valid point to remember. Look, there are lots and lots of different rules and regulations out there. One that's just gone live beginning of January, which was automated decision making tooling in California under the CCPA rules out there. That states that it's not just about who makes the final decision; it's about the automation stack behind it that's impacting the decision. And so, if you're in a situation where you're using a staffing company, and that staffing company is also using automated systems, then you've got this total stack of systems that are impacting that final outcome. And so under that regulation, absolutely. But under good, ethical, responsible hiring processes, you should absolutely be asking the same questions of your staffing providers, as well as your system providers as well.
I love this. So I have, I think, one last question just looking at the time. And it's sort of like a little crazy. So
We
where my
love a bit
mind
crazy.
is going is you have a recruiter, they're looking at that 100 resumes. They're having a great day. They woke up, they felt great, they worked out, they had a cup of coffee, they look at it, they stack rank them, they're top 10. Next day, they come in, they're the control group. pretend they have amnesia, they haven't seen it, they had a terrible day, they didn't sleep, you know, just not feeling it, their coffee got the wrong order, they're going to come up potentially with a different top 10, right? Human. So my one question is like, and this is crazy. So putting aside all the legal stuff, do we think the AI matching is still better
Oh,
than humans? Because, you know, human again, like if we say what you just answer that question again, you're going to say in a slightly different way. Like, how much of an impact is it? Because this is based on LLMs and data that's fed in that changes. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts there? Crazy.
No, it's a fantastic question. Look,
yeah.
there's a few variables that we have to think about there. The first one is that we've always got unconscious bias when it comes to people, and we can clean data that AI is trained on to make sure it's as bias mitigated as possible. You're never going to remove bias, but when it comes to probabilistic systems like large language models, you have no control over what they're doing from one instruction to another. You do have a slight bit of control over people. And you can understand that they're a bit tired that day. Maybe they need to take a break. They can come back to it. There's lots of stress indicators, et cetera, et cetera. But you're right to question that. And I think there's a few points to think about there. First, yes, absolutely, AI can be better than humans because if you use predictable systems rather than large language model based systems, then you are going to potentially get the same output every single time in a system that doesn't get tired and can work 24/7 and doesn't care about when it has its caffeine hit or anything like that. The issue you have is expectations. So people expect people to not be at their best a lot of the time, whereas people expect machines to be at their best 100% of the time. And so there's a lot of faith that's put into machines. There's a lot of we see it now with this issue with hallucinations in large language models, where people don't realize that ChatGPT can get stuff wrong, and they're using it as a replacement for Google. And so there's a lot of faith put in machines. People expect machines to be 100% right 100% of the time, and so that's the challenge we have, is managing expectations. So it's a really good point. It's not crazy at all. It's a really good point, really good question. Comes to a couple of different things. First of all, garbage in, garbage out. Let's make sure that the data that's training these models isn't full of garbage. But let's also manage expectations in the users of those systems so that they know that they're not always going to be 100% right 100% of the time.
Martyn, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
My
Jeanette,
pleasure.
this
Awesome.
as usual, this was great.
Always. Awesome. Thank you. This was great. Until next time, use
Cheers.
AI
Thank you
responsibly.
very much.
Take care, everyone.